In the heart of a vast and powerful kingdom, there lived a king known for his wisdom, integrity, and unshakable belief in the power of truth. His name was King Arvid, and his rule was marked by a commitment to justice that resonated through the land. But the king faced a challenge that would test both his wisdom and his belief in the truth. The kingdom had been at peace for many years, yet beneath the surface, whispers of corruption began to spread. People began to question the fairness of the justice system, and the king's closest advisors, once loyal and true, started to show cracks in their integrity. In this story, we will see how King Arvid's wisdom and his unrelenting belief in truth shaped the fate of his kingdom. But the king was about to discover something that would test the very core of his leadership, a situation so complex and dark that even his wisdom might not be enough to deliver the justice his people needed. Part 1. The Kingdom in Crisis. The sun was beginning to set over the kingdom of Eldoria, casting a warm golden glow across the vast fields and rolling hills. In the royal palace, King Arvid sat in his study, poring over the scrolls of the kingdom's laws. His face was etched with concern. For months, rumors had been spreading through the kingdom like wildfire, rumors of injustice, corruption, and the abuse of power. His advisors had dismissed these rumors, telling him they were nothing more than gossip from disgruntled citizens. But the king couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at play. His mind drifted to the recent events. 2 men had been arrested for stealing from the royal treasury. They were thrown into prison without trial, their fate sealed before they could defend themselves. The people, of course, were furious. They spoke in hushed tones about the king's failure to deliver true justice. The kingdom that had once flourished under his rule now seemed to be crumbling under the weight of its own doubts. The king rose from his desk and walked to the window, gazing out over the kingdom he had sworn to protect. He had always believed in the power of truth, but now, the very fabric of that belief seemed to be unraveling. His eyes narrowed as he thought of the men in the dungeon, their families waiting in uncertainty. Were they truly guilty? Or had something more sinister been at play? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. His most trusted advisor, Sir Alden, entered, his face grave. "Your Majesty," Sir Alden said with a deep bow, "there is troubling news. The people are beginning to lose faith in your judgment. They say that the justice you once delivered so fairly has now become clouded by favoritism and deceit." The king's brow furrowed, but he remained silent, waiting for Sir Alden to continue. "There is more, my lord," Sir Alden continued, his voice lowering. "The 2 men in prison, they were not thieves. The evidence against them was planted. The true criminals, they walk free, hiding in the shadows." The king's heart sank. He had trusted his advisors. He had believed that they were serving the kingdom with honor. But now, the very foundation of his rule was in jeopardy. "Who is behind this?" King Arvid asked, his voice cold and controlled. Sir Alden hesitated before replying. It's Lord Elric, one of your closest allies. He has been manipulating the system for his own gain. He planted the evidence against the 2 men to protect himself and his family." The king's hand clenched into a fist. Lord Elric, a man he had trusted and revered, was the very person orchestrating this corruption. The realization hit the king like a thunderclap. But as angry as he was, the king knew he had to remain calm. He could not let emotions cloud his judgment. "I will deal with this," King Arvid said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet fury. "We will expose the truth no matter the cost." Part 2. The Trial of Truth. The next morning, King Arvid summoned Lord Elric to the royal court. The grand hall was filled with courtiers and nobles, all eager to witness the king's next move. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Lord Elric entered, his expression one of feigned humility. He knelt before the king, bowing low in respect. "Your Majesty," Lord Elric said, his voice smooth and convincing. "I am at your service as always." King Arvid studied him carefully. The man in front of him wore the mask of loyalty, but the king knew the truth. He could feel the weight of the lie hanging in the air like a thick fog. "I have summoned you here today, Lord Elric," King Arvid began, his voice echoing in the hall, "because I have discovered something that cannot be ignored. You have betrayed the trust I placed in you, and the people of this kingdom." Lord Elric's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly recovered, putting on an expression of innocence. "My king," he said, his tone laced with feigned shock. "I am a servant of the crown. I would never—" "Enough!" King Arvid's voice rang out, cutting through the air. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on the king. "You are a liar, Lord Elric, and I will prove it." The king turned to the royal guards, signaling them to bring forth the two men who had been imprisoned. As the prisoners were brought into the courtroom, the tension reached a boiling point. The king watched them carefully. These were innocent men, falsely accused, and it was his responsibility to restore their honor. The king turned to Lord Elric. "These men did not steal from the treasury. You planted the evidence, and now you will answer for your crimes." Lord Elric's face twisted with rage, but he tried to maintain his composure. "You cannot accuse me without proof, Your Majesty. I am a loyal servant of the crown. You will not lie to me any longer," King Arvid interrupted. "The truth is all that matters now. The truth will always rise to the surface, no matter how deep it is buried." The king's voice grew stronger with every word. The courtiers could feel the power of his words, the undeniable conviction behind them. "Take him away," the king commanded, his gaze never leaving Lord Elric's face. Part 3. The Price of Truth. The days that followed the trial were turbulent. Lord Elric was arrested and stripped of his titles, and the two innocent men were released from prison. But even as justice was served, the kingdom felt the sting of betrayal. The people had placed their trust in a man who had used his power for personal gain, and the king's reputation was now in question. King Arvid withdrew into the royal chambers, his heart heavy with the burden of his decision. He had delivered justice, yes, but at what cost? The kingdom was shaken, and the trust between the crown and its people had been broken. The king knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. He had exposed the truth, but now the kingdom would have to heal. Conclusion: the restoration of justice. In the months that followed, King Arvid worked tirelessly to restore the faith of his people. He enacted reforms to ensure that corruption could never take root in the kingdom again. He appointed new advisors, loyal men and women who would serve with honor and integrity. And he made it clear to everyone that the truth, no matter how painful, would always be the foundation of his rule. The king's commitment to justice slowly mended the rift between the crown and the people. Though the scars of betrayal would never fully fade, the kingdom was stronger because of the truth that had been revealed. King Arvid had learned that true justice was not about maintaining power. It was about ensuring that every soul in the kingdom could stand with their head held high, knowing that the truth would always prevail. And so the king's reign continued, marked by wisdom, justice, and the unyielding belief that the power of truth could change the world.